We're starting?
Yeah, we're starting. Hello. So this is Gavin from the Vanguard. We don't have Zach because Zach's a bartender. Um, and uh, and so we I this like podcast I feel like will probably be like best enjoyed if you've seen the first episode of the of my interview with the Vanguard, because I'm not gonna like ask like repeat questions. So I will link that interview in the description. Um, so yeah, the first question I have is actually movie related. So you're a independent, you're a low budget filmmaker. I really enjoyed your last film, Smoking Super Chronic. You doing anything? Oh, you're wearing your shirt. You're
Yep.
wearing your shirt. You're repping
Yep.
that shit.
Smoking super chronic.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're working on anything now?
Not really. Well, kind of, sort of. Nothing as ambitious as the last narrative short film that I worked on, the one you just mentioned. I'm in New Orleans right now, so I have been kind of getting some footage for what might end up being sort of an experimental documentary project or like video essay. So I don't know how that'll turn out or if that will turn out, but I do just like to collect some shots and footage, various inspirations, and edit it together. But it'll be super experimental if, like I said, it turns into anything. Um, I was also kind of thinking about making like a video piece, again, a kind of experimental video piece with some of the footage from the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment, just because there's so much crazy footage that's come out of that. So I was kind of thinking about editing something together with that footage, but nothing that's really as ambitious or as narrative focused as that last short film, like you just mentioned, Alex. So hopefully, when I'm back in Kansas City in a month or so, the creative juices start flowing again, and I can, get the motivation together to start working on something again. But right now, kind of on a bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, I've been on a fucking 5 year hiatus, dude.
Gotcha.
I can send you my short film if you want to see it.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's just a dumbass plug for. I'm gonna plug both of our short films in the in the yeah. Uh, and so yeah, so it is really hard to kind of get motivation to make a short film or a feature. Like for me, it's like you go in there and you kind of like you write an idea and you get excited about that idea, and then you just go into, and then you're like, do I really want to fucking shoot again? Do I really want to like
Yeah.
work on like, do you go to like try to find cast actors for this? Do I really want to find locations for this? Do I really want to do that? And then you're like, fuck this. I would much rather just fucking go sit on like my couch and watch other people's films.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like it's one thing to get ideas and to write scripts and ideas down, but it's a whole nother thing to actually get the cast and crew and all the pieces in place in order to actually make a short film. It's a lot of work. People don't really realize it until they're actually in the director's chair themselves. But even just casting is quite process, right? Luckily there's Facebook groups that you can use to find people willing to, be in your projects. That's what I tend to do.
Yeah.
But when it comes to getting everyone in the right place at the right time and, messaging all these people, hundreds of people sometimes in order to find the right person, it's a real process,
Yeah.
and it requires a lot of time and energy and money, assuming you're trying to pay people even just a little bit.
Yeah, and also just like the other thing is like paying people, like not necessarily like you're paying people, but you're like paying people, like I've not done this, but like friends of mine that are filmmakers who have done this. If you're getting, because I live in like suburban New York, and we're getting and some of them get actors from the city, so you're paying them for their train rides,
Yep.
yeah, to and from suburban New York to from the city and to suburban New York. You get the idea. But yeah,
Yeah. One of
that's
the real challenges with being an independent filmmaker, if you're kind of a one-man band like I am, and you don't have someone to take care of the casting process for you, it's just the real bummer is you have these great ideas, and then it's really a matter of whittling them down into what's actually feasible,
yeah,
what's
exactly.
actually possible to pull off. Because everyone has grand ideas, everyone has their dream projects, but when you have very little money and very little help, ultimately, a lot of your ambitions do have to be whittled down into something that's actually possible to pull off, something that's actually possible to orchestrate with the limited resources available to you. So, obviously my dream is to have a real budget and to have serious resources and help in order to realize a more ambitious film project. Like I said, I would really like to make a feature-length version of Smokin' Super Chronic, but as of now, it's just a matter of trying to work with what we have and, make something that can feasibly be orchestrated.
Yeah. So yeah, I can totally fucking relate to that story. Like, I kind of like, I don't know like where you were at, like Gavin, but like, what is your favorite part of the filmmaking process? I'm just curious.
To be honest, actually, the editing process is my favorite. I'm kind of an editor. I'm best trained as an editor. I had a job briefly before the pandemic where I was editing wedding videos, actually. So while I write, shoot, direct, and edit all of my own projects, I feel like I have the most expertise in the area of editing. Whereas, like with cinematography, I can do it, but I'm kind of just winging it. Like I wouldn't lend my cinematography talents to another production because I just don't feel like I know what I'm doing enough. So I'm comfortable doing it for my own stuff. I wouldn't want to do it for someone else. I'd be like, you should probably find someone a little bit more
Yeah.
experienced. But I would lend my editing talents to another production or another filmmaker if they needed my help because I do feel like I have the proper amount of experience and expertise. And I know my way around Premiere Pro, and I actually really enjoy it. It's something that I really like doing. I always say that the writing, the filming, all of that stuff, that's all just kind of a prerequisite to the editing process, which is where the actual filmmaking takes place, at least to me. And I know that's kind of a hot take because most people would think the filming, the actual on-set production, that's where the filmmaking takes place. But to me, it's kind of just like that's something to get out of the way in order to then really make the magic happen in the editing bay. Which again, I just feel like that's where you have the most control as a filmmaker, where you can play around with things as much as you want and change them. And I don't know, it's just it's my favorite part of the process. You can really experiment.
Yeah, mine is like I would say that mine is like probably writing.
Mm,
Uh, just because like I like similar to you, like I write in other capacities. Like
mm,
for instance, like I already outside of like doing like movies, I also like write poetry and I also working on like a book of essays and stuff like that. So like I like it. Editing is also really fun because like it is more solitary.
right.
And I think like I'm a very introverted person. I don't know if you are introverted in general.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like where it is kind of like you and an editor or you by yourself kind of just like working on the footage and that's kind of good. And that's like good. How
Yeah,
long did it take? Also, just so you know, this is going to be more of a movie centric podcast than last one.
that's totally fine with me, bro.
Like, so yeah, so like some Vanguard listeners are going to be like, why the fuck are they just fucking talking
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes Zach and I get off topic on the show and just start talking about movies, and some people like it, and some people are like, "Come
dude,
on,
that's
let's
my
get to the
favorite
point."
part of the show.
Really?
That's my favorite part of the show is like
That's good to hear.
whenever I super chat, like I'm always like trying to make that part happen more because like I'm trying because like you guys are like it's either like whenever you guys talk about weed and whenever you guys talk about movies, it's my favorite part of the show.
Well, it's also our favorite parts of the show. Politics can be depressing, and I don't know. Film is what really makes me happy. Politics is obviously a passion of mine, and I am invested in it for serious reasons. But when I just need to relax and think about something that's not, incredibly depressing, it's usually about movies. So I'm more than happy to think about that, to talk about that, and always happy to derail the conversation on the podcast with a film related super chat. So we appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, and I know you have Screen Fiends as well, which is your
Yes, which I'll be getting back to in less than a month when I'm back in Kansas City. If you ever want to do a like collaboration of any sort, Screen Fiends would be a good place to broach that potentially. I'd like to have some film related conversations for that channel if you'd ever be interested.
Oh, I'm very interested in if you want to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm still working on building it up to the point of monetization. Right now it's at about 680 subscribers and I need 1,000 to get it monetized. So
Yeah.
right now I'm just trying to, well, as soon as I get back, rather, I'm just trying to produce as much content as possible in order to get to that point. But yeah, I would love to have some conversations with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of just going from smoking super chronic, what are your favorite, because we're going to talk about weed now, which is another favorite subject of me and Gavin's. You should like have like a weed segment. You should have like a third channel being like a weed, just like
That'd be dope.
No. Now that it's legal in Missouri, I would definitely watch you and Zach like review strains and shit like that.
See, the problem with that is like, maybe this is a hot take. I'd be interested in your opinion. When it comes to strain to strain to strain, I don't know, man. I feel like the differences between strains is a little bit overstated sometimes. Like to me, good weed is good weed. Good weed gets me high. Being high is being high. Sure, every strain is a little bit different, but like I said, if it's good weed, it's good weed. I don't really know the difference.
I understand that point of argument, but I also I think the indica and sativa are really fucking different strains of pot. I think that they're very different. And for me, I like sativa, even though it gets me fucking paranoid sometimes. And sativa is like the more paranoid stuff and it's more introspective, but I feel like indica just puts me to sleep. And I'm like are you excited you're going to go to your legal pot store in Missouri when you come back to Missouri?
So excited.
You are so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Especially oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to say, when I went to my first legal pot store, it was like a fucking it was like I literally got a Facebook photo with the manager.
What state was that in?
Arizona.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, was that on your recent trip to Arizona?
That was my recent trip to Arizona. So yeah, I'm excited for you to go to your first legal pot store.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's not my first because I've been to quite a few legal states, and bought pot there. Like when Colorado legalized. What was that, 10 years ago now or something?
Yeah, nearly 10 years ago. No, I think they legalized it 10 years ago, but I think it went into effect 8 or so.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, around the time that happened, Zach and I drove up to Colorado and, I experienced it then. Not 8 years ago, but whenever I turned 21, which was, I guess, 3 years ago. So whenever I became legal age, I went to Colorado, bought weed legally there. I've bought weed legally in Chicago, maybe a couple other states. Those are the two that come to mind. So I have experienced, buying legal cannabis from a dispensary, and it is still trippy. It's still surreal to do so. Because when I first started smoking, it was still illegal everywhere. I'm pretty sure, except for in California, it was medicinally legal and stuff. But when I started smoking, the culture of cannabis was still very much that this is something that you got to do under the table, in the back alley. It wasn't this open, legal, regulated process like it is now. So it's still a little bit surreal for me to go buy weed in a legal setting. But yeah, when I get back to Kansas City, that will be my first time buying weed legally in Missouri.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely that's the difference between our generations is I've grown up with cannabis being legal in the different states and stuff like that. Right. I remember being in middle school when Colorado legalized it, when it went into effect, and we were talking about it in a history class.
Yeah.
And like I had like this history teacher when I was in middle school that was like a former punk rock drummer, and he was like a former stoner and shit like that. And like he would like he like discussed it, and he was like a cool teacher. But yeah, so I grew up with legal weed, so there is kind of that generational difference with weed. I don't think I've ever bought weed. I've had weed bought given to me that has been bought, but I've never like bought weed myself.
Like illegally?
Illegally, yeah.
Gotcha. That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. See, that's the opposite for me. Almost like 99% of the cannabis I've ever consumed has been black market. Not to just be fucking admitting to crimes here on the internet, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just how you had to do it back in the day. Um, and I will say, speaking of cinema, I know you're about to segue into a question related to stoner movies or something. I don't know what you were going to
Yeah.
ask, but one thing I wanted to say real quick is that the only one of the only downsides, in my opinion, of nationwide legalization and the fact that weed is just now so mainstream, I feel like it has kind of taken a hit on like stoner movies as a subgenre. Like you don't see as many of them these days, and I think that's like for the same reason that you don't see as many movies about like drinking beer, right? It's just so normal now. It's not as much of a subculture. It's not as much of a niche in society anymore. It's just something that everyone does, whether you're a fucking, doctor or a lawyer or a fucking frat boy. Like everyone does it now. It's just so commonplace, and there's not that kind of like down and dirty
Yeah.
criminal vibe. Like if you watch movies from the 2000s, like one of my favorite stoner movies of all time is Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And they're having to worry about getting caught in that movie. They're on the campus at I forget which Ivy League, one of the Ivy Leagues. And they buy weed, and then the campus cops are like chasing them down and shit. And like they're worried about the cops catching them, so they have to throw the joint out the window. Like all this kind of stuff that nowadays just isn't really the same because again, it's just accepted, it's legal, it's easily available. There's not that kind of subculture element to it.
Yeah. I agree with that, and then like there's that, and I kind of like I'm like I always like thought like weed is cool and shit like that. Like I always thought that that was like the cool thing, and alcohol was the boring thing that adults do. Like boring adults do.
Right.
And sadly, that is probably not going to be that way anymore. Sadly,
No, I feel like it's only a matter of time if we're not there already where cannabis is the more popular substance of choice
it's
among
more
people of
popular
all
than
ages.
cigarettes.
Well, yeah, that does not surprise me. That does not surprise me. But yeah, I would not be surprised if in the near future cannabis becomes a more popular substance, recreational substance than beer or wine
Yeah.
or whatever among adults and people our age, young adults, whatever you want
Yeah.
to call our age group.
Yeah, I was just thinking. So I still need to see Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Really? You've never seen it?
I need to see it. I'm like I did. It's so funny. Like my stoner movie. Like I still like I just saw Pineapple Express like a few weeks ago.
We were talking about that on the podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I saw that with my mom, and my mom loved Superbad. Like my mom like genuinely really enjoyed Superbad, and my mom despised Pineapple Express.
Really? Because Superbad is also really raunchy.
Yeah, no, I think it had to do with like just like a generational difference about weed.
Interesting. Is she not? Is
No,
she
no,
not
she's
consumed?
like both my parents are like open about like they're I think they're both pro legalization, but like they're it's like both my parents are like my mom was born in 59 and my mom was born in 59 and my dad was born in 61. And also my dad's British, so there's not the weed culture that there is in America. Uh,
Interesting.
so like my dad is not as in favor of weed. They're both in favor of legalization because I think they both see how dumb legalization is. Like not legalization, but dumb criminalization
Prohibition.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but like they're not like fully, and also like I have like a 16-year-old brother who's like who they're like trying to protect from marijuana. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
no, I have
Well,
to.
Oh, go ahead.
I have to hide my weed. I have to like put it in my like. I have to put it in my like closet and shit.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, did you know that according to Seth Rogen, Pineapple Express and Superbad are supposed to take place in the same universe, like in the same.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're supposed to be in the same universe. I don't think there's any like character crossovers or whatever, but he was like, yeah, he said that they wrote it to be in the same world.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do love both of those movies.
I do too.
Superbad is such a classic. I think Superbad's probably a slightly better film.
I agree with that.
I think Pineapple Express kind of. I was never as big of a fan of the third act
Oh,
of
I agree
Pineapple
with you
Express.
completely on that.
It kind of just becomes like this crazy action movie,
Yeah.
whereas like the best parts of that film are in the first two halves, or the first two acts, where it's more of just like a laid back, chill, like hangout movie. That's my favorite parts of those movies. But Superbad has such a great climax.
Yeah.
That I think that does take the cake. Although James Franco's performance in Pineapple Express is just an all-time classic, just
Yeah.
absolutely iconic.
Yeah. It's so sad that motherfucker's a creep and shit like that.
I
It's
know,
just
I
so
know.
sad.
Have
It's
you
so
ever seen Spring Breakers?
we could actually get into a conversation about Spring Breakers if you want.
Spring Breakers is actually potentially my favorite movie of all time.
Okay. I'm gonna disagree with you about Spring Breakers, but I want to have a debate with you about Spring Breakers.
All right, we can do that. We can save that for a later time. But actually, I don't know if you're familiar. James Franco's character wears this jacket in that movie in one scene, which is where I found this jacket, which is what inspired the name of that short film. Anyway, that's a fun fact.
That's a fun fact. Yeah, I actually do want to like just talk about Spring Breakers a little bit.
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
Let's do it.
You brought that up, so I'm going to do it. So Spring Breakers for me is a movie that I have, for a long time, I have watched like 20 minutes of and then turned it off. And then finally, like I think a year ago, I think I watched the full thing. And I was like, this is just a Girls Gone Wild video with some really annoying ass characters. And you know what's funny? A movie it often gets compared to, which came out the same year, The Bling Ring.
The Bling Ring.
I think The Bling Ring is a much superior film.
Boo! No, that's so off base. That's so off base. And Alex, I can understand that opinion. That's an opinion that a lot of people have about Spring Breakers just being kind of a dumb party movie. The first time I saw Spring Breakers when it came out in 2014, I want to say 13. That was before I was as familiar with Harmony Korine's work. Have you seen any other of Harmony Korine's films?
Oh, I've tried to watch Gummo, and I really, really enjoyed Beach Bum.
I also love the Beach Bum.
I love the Beach Bum. Yeah.
Speaking of stoner movies, that's one of the best of recent years for sure. It's a modern classic in my
I
opinion.
love the Beach Bum. Yeah.
Okay, so with Spring Breakers, like I said, I can understand why people think it's just like a dumb party movie. The first time I saw it, I kind of thought the same thing. But the more you understand about Harmony Korine's sensibilities as an artist, and I would recommend you rewatch Spring Breakers, view it more as like a satire than just like a straightforward, unironic film. What it really is, it's an exploration of kind of, for one, American capitalism, but also just American hedonism and our culture of unbridled excess.
Yeah.
If you watch it through those lenses, I think that the point of that movie really becomes a lot more clear. And again, also don't view it so unironically. It's very satirical. It's definitely making fun of a lot of what's on screen at all times, while at the same time reveling in that hedonism. So yeah, I think it's really about American excess, entrepreneurship, and capitalism, and the contrast between said hedonism and the bloodthirsty and violent exploitation of human beings, which allows for that culture to exist in our country. Yeah. You'll notice many times throughout that film, they directly contrast pretty brutal violence with these insane, excessive partying sequences. And I really do think it's a pretty profound film about, our system of bloodthirsty capitalism.
Yeah. I'll definitely rewatch it. Like, in fact, like if I might actually you made me want to rewatch it more. I might do it in the next few days.
I just, even if you put that aside, even if you don't, care about the subtext and the themes about capitalism and all that stuff. I still love the way that movie's shot. This guy who filmed it, I think I always forget his name.
It's like something. It's like Benoit or some shit. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, yeah. He also shot a lot of Gaspar Noé's films. I don't know if you like Gaspar Noé, but yeah, Benoit Debie is his name.
Yeah.
One of my favorite cinematographers. He also shot The Beach Bum. Like I said, he shot a lot of Gaspar Noé's movies like Climax and Enter the Void and stuff like that. He's a brilliant cinematographer. I absolutely adore the aesthetics of that movie, and the costume design. Like I said, this jacket is where I found that film, or I found this jacket from the costume direction in that movie. I love the costume direction. I love the colors and the aesthetic of it. I think it's just a great sensory experience. And the way it's edited, too. I was telling you about how much I like editing. It's a very interesting film from an editing perspective. Harmony Korine said he tried to edit it like a pop song, not like a traditional narrative film. And I think that really makes for a just fascinating experience on an editing level. So yeah, I know it's unpopular among a lot of people. It's kind of a divisive film, but I think Spring Breakers is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I will now make the case for the Bling Ring. I don't know if you like the Bling Ring.
I do. It's perfectly fine. I think it's boring compared to Spring Breakers, but it's not bad.
For one, I think that the Bling Ring makes its satire way more obvious, which sounds bad, but it actually like is good for me at least, because like I feel like there's like a sense of satire, and like for instance, I was watching Bling Ring actually a few days ago, and like I love how like in the first scene Emma Watson is doing her little speech about how I want to run a country someday. And like and I love just kind of the way Sofia Coppola shoots it, where like one thing I noticed is like every single shot of that movie looks like it could be like on a fashion magazine. Like it could be in a magazine or something like that. It's shot in that kind of weird, like kind of digital way, and I like that. Also like the performances. And the other thing with Spring Breakers is I despise every single one of those girls so much. They are so fucking annoying. And like when Selena Gomez is in that pool and she's like, "Mama, I don't know. I think you would really like it here. I'm having so much fun."
That's supposed to be satirical though. The whole point of that is that they play it over and over again over these scenes of insane hedonism and debauchery, and it's like, I think we should. We're having so much fun, Grandma. I think we should come back next year together over these scenes of like asses shaking and beer getting poured all over chicks and stuff.
Well,
that's 100% satirical. But I can understand why it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. What was that?
I want to rewatch it because I do think that I think it would be good. It's one of those movies that I actually think would probably benefit from being stoned while watching it.
100%. Get stoned as hell. Watch it on as big of a screen as possible, in a dark of his room as possible. Pay attention to the neon aesthetic and just kind of revel in it. I also like the Bling Ring. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shit on it. I remember I saw that movie in theaters actually when it came out, also in 2013, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I'm not a huge fan of Emma Watson, to be honest. I've never been a huge fan of her acting, but she's decent in the film, and I will agree that the cinematography is incredible in the Bling Ring. There's one shot in that film that always sticks out in my head, and that's the single take shot of the house from far away, where you watch them like rob it, and it remains static the whole time. That's a great shot. So I don't have any problem with the Bling Ring, but if we're going to compare it to Spring Breakers, I do think it just pales in comparison, frankly.
Spring Breakers is your favorite Korean film, right?
Yes, it is. And Harmony Korine is my second favorite filmmaker.
And Lynch, I think, is your favorite filmmaker.
Yep, Lynch is my favorite. And my favorite movie is basically just depending on what my mood is, whichever David Lynch film I'm in the mood for.
I'm going to go into that question now. What is your top 5 favorite films?
Oh, God. Top 5 favorite films? Probably, God, like I said, it kind of depends on my mood because it just kind of depends on which David Lynch film I'm in the mood for. Right now, lately, I would say Lost Highway is my number one.
I need to see Lost Highway.
I love that movie so much. Although kind of like Spring Breakers, it took me a few like viewings to fully
Enjoy it.
grasp it. Like the first time I watched it, I thought it was one of David Lynch's lesser films. Actually, I was like, that was decent, but it doesn't hold a candle to Mulholland Drive, etc. And then I rewatched it a few times, and now it's actually my favorite of his films. But either way, I would say Lost Highway number one, probably Spring Breakers number two, um, number three Mulholland Drive, another David Lynch film. Number four would probably be Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was like my favorite movie growing up, and I still think it's
I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
Really.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since I was like probably 10.
When I was a kid, I was absolutely obsessed with the Indiana Jones film. That was kind of my like how I got into movies. Actually, I was just so obsessed with the Indiana Jones films. I straight up watched each of them over 40 times. I used to like keep track of it.
Really?
And yeah.
I thought it was Godzilla.
What?
I would just guess it was Godzilla because you
Godzilla too. I also love Godzilla, and I still do love Godzilla. But you know, the Godzilla movies are fun to watch, but I don't think they're like great films in the same way that like if I rewatch Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's a masterpiece. I legitimately think it's the best action adventure film ever made. I think it's one of the best American movies ever made. Whereas the Godzilla movies are more like in the guilty pleasure territory. I still love them, but like they're just not like the characters aren't as strong. The plot isn't as strong. You really watch those movies for the kaiju action, right? Versus Raiders of the Lost Ark, or really any of the first three Indiana Jones film, the original trilogy. I think they hold up as some of the best pieces of American blockbuster filmmaking that has ever happened. And I fully stand by that. I think if you rewatch Raiders in particular, you'll see what I'm saying. It's not just a movie that you can enjoy as a kid. It really is a standout film. Even from a cinematography perspective, every single shot in that movie, every single camera move is just insanely perfect. Yeah, that definitely holds up as still one of my top 5 favorites. I think that was 4 movies I just said. And I guess for number 5, I would probably go with Inland Empire, which is another David Lynch film that I've always loved.
Yeah. That's I haven't seen any of the David Lynch movies you mentioned, which I need to.
Have you seen any at all?
Oh, I've seen Blue Velvet, and that's it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I would recommend rewatching Blue Velvet for one.
Oh, I love Blue Velvet. I think it's
okay. I didn't know if you liked it or not.
No,
but
I love Blue Velvet. Yeah.
Pretty much every David. Oh, go ahead.
I had a friend that was really into it, and kind of I saw it because I just love the Americana, kind of like where it's like kind of stuck in time. I'll do my top 5 list if you're curious.
Go for it. And to be honest, I said Inland Empire, but I would probably actually go Blue Velvet as my 5th favorite. I love that movie so much.
Yeah, and this is in no order. Taxi Driver is one.
Hey, love Taxi Driver.
I saw Taxi Driver late in my like film going journey. I saw it when I was 17, and it was just one of those movies that I saw. And a lot of times I'm actually not in the mood to watch Taxi Driver. But I remember very vividly I saw that movie when I was in Arizona on a trip, and I was mesmerized by Taxi Driver. I thought it was brilliant. I looked into more of Scorsese's. Like I actually like was not familiar. I hadn't seen King of Comedy at that point, which led me to King of Comedy, which is underrated as fuck. But yeah, it's brilliant.
Actually, never seen King of Comedy.
Oh, you need to see King of Comedy.
It's been on my list for so long. I just never got around to it.
You'll see how much Joker rips it off.
Yeah.
Joker is pretty much a King of Comedy ripoff.
And a Taxi Driver ripoff.
And a Taxi Driver ripoff, but specifically a King of Comedy ripoff. My number 2 is probably The Place Beyond the Pines.
Great movie.
And The Place Beyond the Pines, like for every film person that I know that is Gen Z is like in their like top 15. Like I know so many Gen Zers are like, that was like the movie that made me love movies. And I remember seeing it. I lied to my dad and said it was only R for language, and he took me, and he was like, what the fuck? he was like, "What the fuck? I should never have taken Alex to see this really relatively violent film." And I
It's
was
not
like,
that bad.
"Not that bad," but like I think I was like 12 or 11 when I saw that. And the other movie I was 11 when I saw that. The other movie is that's on my list is Her. Spike Jones is Her.
That's a great
Um,
movie too. I remember seeing that in theaters.
yeah, I saw it. There's a funny way of saying it. So I convinced my parents to go to the New York Film Festival
Mm.
when I was a kid. And it's one of like three. I've been to Toronto. I've been to a few film festivals. But I was like, when I went to New York Film Festival, they don't rate the films before, so I could kind of
Mm.
trick my parents into seeing like more R-rated material. And I saw Her, and I was
With your
just
parents?
with my dad, which is a weird experience.
I actually also saw Her with my mom, and I remember being very uncomfortable during like the phone sex scene where she's like moaning and they're like
Yeah,
fucking. You know what I'm saying? Or that's not
the
phone
scene
sex,
that,
but it's like the
yeah,
sex scene.
yeah, there's that scene. The scene I was uncomfortable with was, remember, the scene where they get the prostitute.
That's what I'm
To,
talking about.
oh, that scene.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the scene I felt uncomfortable with. Um, there's actually a video that that my dad recorded of me being excited to see Her and going in the train station, and yeah, and like number four is probably I'll probably put Superbad in it.
Nice. Classic.
Superbad. No, actually, I'm not gonna put Superbad. Chasing Amy.
Oh, Kevin
Chasing
Smith.
Amy
Nice. I love
is
Chasing Amy.
is and when you see my short film, you'll see a lot of allusions to Chasing Amy. Um, Chasing Amy is a very I just saw it, and I just fell in love with the dialogue. And Kevin Smith at the time was such a great dialogue writer. I was never into comic books, which was kind of like my hard thing that I got with some Kevin Smith movies, especially of late. But I love Chasing Amy. I still love Clerks as well.
Same. Oh
Um,
yeah, all of Kevin Smith's stuff from the '90s is.
is
I love Mallrats,
Yeah,
Clerks, Dogma, Chasing Amy. They're
yeah,
all so good.
yeah. They're great. And then number five probably is a movie I recently saw that I know you love, which is Donnie Darko.
Hey, hell
Which
yeah,
is
bro.
Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
Donnie Darko is a film that I love deeply. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's one of those movies that um kind of, I watched it and I felt it was one of those movies like I think Clerks did this and Chasing Amy did this for me, as well as some Linklater films and some Seth Rogen films, where I watched it and I felt understood.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who is kind of like an angsty, rebellious teenager, I related to that movie a lot. And I
Same.
related to the rebellion against the kitty farmer.
Yes.
To the rebellion against, I bet did you have like a kitty farmer in high school?
I mean, I grew up with a lot of surrounded by a lot of kitty farmers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
yeah.
I had
Oh
like
yeah.
one of my favorite parts of that movie is when Donnie is like questioning the exercise, and he's like, "If you don't do this, you're gonna get an F."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is so relatable to me, and
It's
not
so
only
good.
just the relatability, but also just the masterclass of tension, the incredible performance by Jake Gyllenhaal at such a young age. Like, I look at the Jake Gyllenhaal performance, and he just transforms into Donnie.
Yep.
The movements, like, I always thought that like uh he had like I always just like and I he's just very good. I think Jenna Malone, who's like not talked about at all,
She's
really
great in that film.
is
Yeah.
great in it. I think that, yeah, Jenna Malone is like never talked about in that movie. Like, people don't
True.
people never talk about Jenna Malone, but Jenna Malone is really good in that movie. I think about the Halloween party scene near the end, and uh and I yeah.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more, man. Donnie Darko is one of those movies where it's like, if you're a guy of our age, it's kind of a cliche to love it. But there's a reason why it's so beloved. Like you said, it is incredibly relatable. It's one of the few movies that pulls off. It's one of the only movies I've seen that pulls off being so darkly disturbing, sad, and hilarious at the same
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Like, it is genuinely a funny movie. There's so many
Yeah,
parts in that movie that always make me die laughing. But it's also, like I said, a scary film, a disturbing film, and ultimately a tragic film. It's one of the only
yeah,
movies that always makes me cry when I watch
yeah,
it in the
yeah,
last scene.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, just what a fucking masterpiece,
It's
dude.
a
I love
masterpiece. Yeah.
Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
Even the and thought provoking too. I mean, the more you
Like,
watch that movie, the first time you see it, you have no idea what the fuck you've just seen. But the more
I
you
watched
watch
it
it,
stoned. I watched it stoned, which was
nice.
like this transcendent experience.
For the first time you watched it
For the
stoned,
first time
or
I saw it stoned, yeah, and then I saw
gotcha,
it
yeah,
sober and liked it more.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. It's such a great
it's
movie,
such a
dude.
good movie.
I fucking love. I've probably seen that film at least like 8 or 9 times.
Yeah, and I know I'm kind of cheating, but I do have a number six, uh, which is Election. Um,
Ooh, hell yeah, I love
uh,
that one too.
Election is a movie my mom showed me when I was way too young. I was like 11 when I saw Election, and my mom loves that movie. And my mom and I have like kind of a movie going. Like she's probably like one of the people I love showing movies to my mom, and sometimes she likes.
Same actually.
Yeah. And she loved Election so much that she let me watch it. And I remember seeing Election on HBO, and it was just this experience of like dark comedy. It's such a movie, and it's also a movie that is so accurate. People talk about just like it's metaphor for politics, but it's not just that. It's really understands high school in terms of high school politics, and not just high school politics in terms of like the race, but in just terms of like who likes who likes that. I think I'm really sad. You hear the girl who was played Tammy died like a year ago?
No, I did
Yeah,
not.
the girl who played Tammy just died a year ago. I was like so sad because of that.
Damn,
But
that
yeah,
sucks. I didn't know about that, but yeah, I do love Election. My favorite Alexander Payne film is Sideways, but Election's probably number two.
yeah, elections. I still need to fucking see something.
Oh, you haven't seen
Um,
Sideways, bro?
I still haven't fucking seen Sideways.
That's like a top 20 film for me. I adore Sideways.
I just thought like it was just like a like when I like thought about Sideways, I just thought it was like one of those like old white men beer movies for some reason.
No,
Like,
dude, it's so much better than that. It's so much. It's wine, not beer, also, but
yeah,
uh, it's a great film. It's truly one of the most rewatchable. It's also hilarious, but it's kind of sad at the same time. I think you would love Sideways. Definitely give that a watch as soon as possible.
definitely. I'll tell you what I think about it. And I do want to make one political thing before we wrap. Um, because I don't want to. I just think that people would want to see one political thing. Who is your least favorite conservative commentator?
Whew. Least favorite conservative political commentator. That's tough. I mean, I don't know if I have a least favorite. They all just I kind of hate them all equally, man. Like for different reasons, admittedly, but I I mean, Matt Walsh is an obvious one
That's who mine is.
because he's just
Yeah,
so like outwardly fascist, especially with his recent comments about how we should just like execute the homeless and the drug addicted and all that stuff. But then again, I almost kind of respect him more for just coming out there and like being honest about his fascist tendencies versus a Candace Owens or a Ben Shapiro who tries to be more, coded in the way they talk about that stuff. I guess I don't know. Like I don't feel more hatred for him than I do someone like Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, or even Jordan Peterson, who I think is just such a fucking charlatan. My least favorite thing about Jordan Peterson is how he tries so hard and so many people believe he's a genuine intellectual. When if you actually listen to him talk, it's just so obvious how stupid he really is. But so I hate him for being a charlatan. But yeah, I mean Matt Walsh is hard not to choose.
yeah. Again, I'm very much in the Matt Walsh camp. I hate that man with a burning fucking passion. I think he's terrible. Like people who are like relatives of mine that are conservative even think he's crazy.
Yeah.
Like he's a crazy person. And he just like it's so funny because Bret Easton Ellis is like one of my favorite like novelists. Are you familiar with Bret Easton Ellis's work?
No.
Oh, he wrote American Psycho.
Oh, gotcha.
He wrote American Psycho, and he's been like kind of like on like for the past like 3 years, he's been like a conservative basically, and he's gone on like Ben Shapiro and shit like that. And like I'm like, dude, the conservatives that you're hanging out with would have called your book blasphemy in 1995 or 1996, whenever that came out. The conservatives are in social justice warriors in a lot of ways.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at this point, I say this all the time on the Vanguard, but at this point, the conservatives are far more obsessed with identity politics and pearl clutching over, representation in media and all that crap than anyone on the left is.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope you had a nice time. Let's wrap it up because I know you have a Vanguard episode to do. Anyway, the one thing I miss about your set is I miss the Guy Fawkes mask.
Yeah, I miss it too. I'm excited to get back in the studio with Zach, so I have that there. But yeah, really appreciate it, Alex. It was a great time chatting. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to collaborating again in the future. And let's do some Screen Fiend stuff together when I'm home, because I do miss having a co-host when I talk about that stuff. And it would be fun to chat about some movie news and do some reviews together or something like that.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it. And I'll send you in the email, I'll send you my short film that I did.
Sweet, dude. I'm looking forward to checking it out.
It's very 16-year-old edgy. So just like be prepared for just some like some problematic humor. But yeah.
Oh no, don't worry about that. I love some problematic humor, so
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, man. We'll talk soon. Great chatting.
Great chatting. Thanks, man.
Peace.
Peace.